Hey, Jack, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to
Yeah,
be in your
so
house.
the Jack Foreman, and you're an entertainer, a musician, a writer. You embody creativity. You have been in media entertainment, in which I love, is in a lot of the family friendly space with your past with Kids Place Live and the Monkey House and so many creative aspects and outlets. I am excited to talk to you really about a core level of creativity and some of that source and where it comes from.
Yeah.
And also a little bit to hear about your past and maybe your experience in the we'll call it the entertainment world, or where you've gone from. But
Yeah, yeah.
first, I want to just ask before we get into your past. I do want to ask do you find yourself in this creative spaces? Is it did you always feel like a creative, or was it something you developed through discipline by showing up, or is it just a crazy outlet? You
Yeah,
all the above?
yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to go back here as far as I can, like, into my earliest childhood memories. As, like, an early young kid, I was always a builder. I think about
Sure.
it when I watch my own kids growing up, things that their proclivities and things that they're passionate about that remind me of me and things that are, like, totally different. For instance, my son is, currently playing basketball, and, dude, where did that come from? But we share a lot of similarities. I was like a big Lego builder early on. First place that creatively I was actually taking, starting from scratch with endless possibilities and starting to feel my way through it. I
Yeah.
also was lucky to, I was born in Bloomington, Indiana, home of a really well known music school. And I took cello lessons as a 4-year old from like a
Oh my gosh.
virtuoso cello teacher. So
Wait, from a cello. Wait, are you the big
yeah, yeah,
cello?
yeah.
You're a 4-year-old with a big
It was like
holding.
a peewee cello, half
Okay,
size.
okay, okay. Yeah, it was a mini cello, a micro cello.
And I don't remember this, but my parents tell me that, like, anytime I was in a lesson and my teacher turned her back, I would try to turn the cello over on my knee and play it like a guitar, like a bass guitar. So, like, fast forward, it's no question why 14 years later I bought my first bass.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's awesome.
but yeah, so I definitely had, from an early stage, I saw myself really connecting with creative arts. And I really think of Lego that way. Like, it's definitely a creatively technical environment that you're creating in, but it's still a place that's totally self-driven and you
Absolutely. There's a
harness all
freedom in there. There's a
yeah,
and obviously the stuff if you buy it and it's you build the specific thing, but once you break it down, there's a freedom within I can do anything with these.
yeah,
I would say back in our day though, they didn't have all the pieces they do now. Like
right, I
now
was just
there's
gonna say that.
all
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was just blocks. I remember too, there was just the one that was like one hinge or something like that. And that was about the craziest thing that maybe I had on my Lego table. But so it's definitely a little rudimentary, maybe, because I definitely, like you, was all about the Legos back when I was a kid too.
Yeah, and as I remember, they came in, like, they were always in pieces. Like, I know that
Yeah,
at some point sets got built. Probably my dad built them before I was even really able to. We're talking like early 80s. But
sure.
yeah, as long as I knew about Legos, they were just in a big pile. My kids now have Lego sets and they build it one time per the directions and then just leave them on the shelf exactly as built.
Same
So
with my
it's a
boys. Yep,
slightly different occupation than it used to be, I guess.
it is. It's definitely more of the model, the fixed thing now. Now
Yeah.
it's like the Star Wars figure or something like that, and it sits on the shelf instead of the break it down and just build whatever again. But yeah, it's interesting how that evolved. I
Yeah,
agree.
well, and that evolution is real. Like, now one of my favorite, like, sideline hobby activities, once I professionalized music and I somehow was able to earn a living just from talking, which is that's the dream for an extrovert, all these other pursuits that I used to pursue as a kid came back. So, like, one of my biggest hobbies is house renovations. I
Yeah,
just got finished with a hallway project outside of my studio here where I, like, cathedralized the ceiling and added skylights, and in the middle of it, I'm like, "Dude, this is exactly what I used to do with Lego." Like, the exact
yes.
same thing, making decisions on the fly and
Isn't that fun? Iterating, just figuring it out as you go. You got a general plan, but that
yeah,
iteration and you got to stay malleable and flexible, but still stay rigid enough. You're like, I know this because you can't have a big hole in your ceiling. Eh,
yeah. Oh, it's such a great analogy for creativity in general. It's you've
yeah,
gotta have a through line and a destination in mind, but hopefully be open to all those weird little problems and issues that come up and see those provocations as the places where you're gonna surprise yourself, like when the
yeah,
terrain changes. That
yeah,
happens to me constantly, and honestly, that's one of the reasons that I most love working with kids and creating music and spoken word content for kids.
yeah,
They're constantly changing and they're constantly surprising me. Like, I never know what to expect when I'm on a call with a kid or,
absolutely. I
if I'm
bet.
listening to my kids at dinner when I used to be a teacher. I used to think that if I could just record all the surprising ideas that I heard in just one day in my first and second grade classroom, that would be enough creative provocation for an entire career of albums and stories and
Right.
artwork. Those surprises are, for me, that's where creativity lives. When
That's
my head, I do that like double take.
You know what I love, because you already touched on it too, was that going back to it, you tied the creativity and the childhood experience. And I absolutely love that you said that, because there's such coming back to home, a coming back to origin or inherent talent. Because when we have those kind of freedoms as a child, I say freedoms, and I say that just with the sense of imagination, and you're just the thought process that anything is
Yeah.
possible. The
Oh, yeah.
flight, the superheroes, whatever those imaginary little daydreams you had as a child, and it's somewhere along the way we become adults, and it's adults aren't as nearly as fun as children.
Boring.
Exactly,
We
exactly.
lose that spark. It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, but it's really interesting that I think a lot of people that I've talked to about true, like, creativity source, a lot of people do associate it with the childhood experiences. And that's really a beautiful connection. Obviously, we have all the life experience now to add on to that, but it's gorgeous when adults can be open in that environment and embody that creativity, the flow state, and truly let it explore and let your freak flag fly, in a sense. Or so I do want to. So a couple of different things I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about music and entertainment. So if you could actually, I would like to hear about your background, because you talked about growing up in Indiana. I
Mhm.
still think it's pretty funny as a 4-year-old with a cello. I'm not going to lie to you. I
Yeah,
don't care how small it is. I think it's pretty
totally.
funny.
Is it funny
Yeah,
too that it was 1981 and that cello teacher was
yeah.
chain smoking cigarettes at the same time? Is that funny? I don't know.
That is pretty funny. I will say one little divergent one is I did the trombone, but I didn't want to in grade school. But I was one of the taller kids, and the teacher was like, "You have long arms. You're on the trombone, the side trombone." And I was like, "I don't
Yes.
want to be on the side trombone." But it was because of physicality, because I could reach the 4 points of the slide, and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
shoved into the trombone, and it didn't last very long. I'm not going to lie to you. I am not
Hey,
a trombonist now to this.
I'm a fellow trombonist.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, like, deep root chorus, there's identification there. I'm in on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. I was able to reach the 7th position by the
Oh
time
my
I
gosh.
took over trombone,
Yes.
but,
That would take giraffe arms. You would just
I
have
picked
to, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, I didn't have the right kind of lips.
I got you. Yeah.
I wore braces my entire time playing trombone, and it was brutal.
Oh, that
Like,
would be a challenge.
walking out of bands, like, feeling like ground beef. It was gross, like, just
I
oh my
never
god.
made that association. That's really funny. You would think kids with braces are, yeah,
Yeah, should have been a
they're not
professional.
in the horn section.
No, it's funny, in 5th grade, where I went to school, elementary school ran through 5th grade, and there was 0 connection to middle school. It was undiscovered country, so ambiguous. We had no idea what was coming, and we all got shellacked when we hit 6th grade, which is part of I'm carrying that too. As
Yeah.
much childlike creativity as I'm carrying with me from grades 5 and under, there's, like, a certain 6th grade pain that's probably part of me too, but
Well, that is. It's so funny you said that, because now
yeah.
you're striking up all these old memories that I haven't thought of forever. But I do remember, like, junior high being like, oh, that was an angsty little, like,
Oh, yeah.
transition before. I think that's one of those tough ages for a lot of people. It's a I don't know. That one's a pretty interesting time.
For sure. So in 5th grade, we were given questionnaires. Basically, band was recruiting for 6th grade. Hey, are you interested in playing in band? What instrument do you want to play? And they had a list of instruments, and I just looked through them all, and I picked the instrument that I thought was the funniest one. So I chose
Oh my
trombone.
god.
Little did I know I was
Oh my god.
saddling this thing like an albatross for 5 years of
Oh
playing
my
it
goodness.
after that.
Wasn't as funny then, was
It wasn't still pretty funny, but more
it? It is.
in
Yeah.
the Schadenfreude kind of way. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So, how about this? Because I have some other questions about creativity and stuff, but I would love to hear about a little bit about your background,
Yeah.
either in the entertainment, in the kind of that I think of it as the radio world, but maybe you view it a little bit different with your voice and that side of it. But I also want to hear about your music history. Well, I heard the 5th grade and under version, but
Yeah.
as like you went into adulthood and some of those entry points, and I don't know if that's an aligned story or if that's two different paths that kind of went into that direction.
It's interesting. My wife and I are finally getting, and I swear there's a connection here. My wife and I are finally getting around to watching the HBO show True Detective, where
Oh, okay, yeah. I did
there's,
watch that. Yeah, I just
there's
recently watched it. People
yeah,
said it, yeah. Yeah.
There's the quote, "Time is a flat circle," this premise that
Yeah.
from a fourth dimension, you look down on all these lowly time dwellers like us, and
Yes.
our lives resemble just a circle. Our matter is like spanned between any place we've ever been, and we're just trapped in little paths within it. What's interesting is if you were to look, and as I look back now on my flat circle, like the trajectory is super clear that like I had my foot in all the places that I'm still now creative from an
Mhm.
early age, and I just stuck with them without any plan or aspiration of where they would go. But if you were looking at where I ended up backwards, it was like, oh, I must have had a plan this whole time to get here. Like the confluence of events and how well they supported each other for me growing up and
Yep.
coming into my own creatively, like it couldn't have been written better. I feel so lucky that all these things intertwined.
Yeah.
Like
That's like
I'm an
looking
opportunist for sure, and anytime I see an opportunity where I can like flex one of those creative muscles in a sphere that I'm really comfortable in, I will. And those things just tend to reinforce each other, interestingly.
absolutely. That's kinda looking back and connecting the dots, the Steve Jobs quote
Oh
in that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
But
from
I
a
do like that. I like that
okay,
view you were talking about with the flat line looking down in the fourth dimensional, because there really is something to that that the overview or the feeling and the tone of that. But it's interesting to hear you say that, because I think that there's this you as an entertainer and the creative and everything else. I think that's, and I'm going to go two different directions. I will connect it
okay.
because I do want to hear about your background. I'm not trying to diverge from that, but I think is those so many of us take a more I'll just say maybe a much more rigid path. I shouldn't generalize, but many people go it's the younger years, the high school, the college, the maybe a corporate gig, and you follow these things that you think you're supposed to do. And I'm associating this with that what you're talking about, or which we're talking about, creativity and
Mhm.
living in those creativities and actually building a career built around those. And I guess if I'm to cut to it with you, is I really admire that you've built a career path, and maybe it always wasn't in the creative window, but where you're at today and what you historically have achieved from. Anyways, how about from my seat, you have built a career around
Hey, all
built in
right.
creativity.
Yeah.
So
Thank
and
you.
that's an amazing thing, because I think there's many of us that might be even a scary path, even though it feels fun and light, and not always, but the essence of writing songs or being a writer, or if it's art or whatever those outlets are of that creative outlet, or maybe it's even giving a speech or a keynote, whatever that is for the individuals that were maybe listening to this,
Mhm.
is there's that it doesn't mean you have to be scared of it. You can embrace it, and you can live that life and live within that and actually.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we all struggle to get a sense of ourselves from an outside perspective. And
Mhm.
likewise, we all perceive each other with the veneers of success or like the what people's experiences are looking like on the
Yeah.
outside. And it's not just I don't think it's a human tendency unless you're like a strong empath to be able to cut to the chase and get right to the emotional core of the process that got people to where they are. And when I was a kid growing up, like I was very briefly pre-med in
Oh my
college.
god. Yeah,
I
that's amazing.
I ended up being a creative writing major, so, like, that tells you the kinda changes I was going through in college, and
Yes.
I'll talk more about that, but, like, the reason I was pre-med was basically I was in high school in the early to mid 90s, and on NBC ER was like a really popular show, and I
Oh
looked
my
at George
goodness.
Clooney on TV and it was like, dude, guy's got it
You're like, I
going
could
on,
do
looks
that.
pretty
I could do
successful, like
that.
there's a job, like yeah, I could I feel like I could walk around a clinic and wear a lab coat like that, and I could
Right.
probably learn how to intubate someone on command, and I could fill up 52 minutes in network TV time slots. So yeah, all right, that's a yeah, let's there's a goal.
But that actually speaks to you a little bit, maybe as a personality. I shouldn't dive in, but a romantic. You potentially romanticize things, or you have a view of these. You see the beauty in them, and you're like, "Oh, I can do that. I can." And that's a very cool.
That's very
That's very
generous.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
exceedingly generous of you.
All
And
right. All right.
honestly,
I was connecting those dots. It's there.
another way to maybe another way to tell that story is that I was like 18 and super scared and latched onto the first thing that looked like some version of success because I felt lost. And honestly, in some ways, I still do. Not in a terrifying way and not in a debilitating way, but when I look backwards, my path has been very clear, and every good decision that I've made has always been one that springs from like my core passions, which are basically heartfelt decisions. Like
Yeah.
I could go into graphic design, which is probably something that would pay well that I wouldn't be very excited about, or I could run after school clubs at a school right after I graduated college. For me, there was no question. Like getting to work with the kids that I ended up serving for the next 25 years of my professional life in one way or
Yeah.
another, that little glimmer of connection was there from a very early age. So, what I've learned by looking backwards is that there is a lot of strength in playing to your strengths and like your core belief structures in the moment when everything's ambiguous. Like you don't know which decision's the one that's going to be the turning point, fork in the
It's
road
true.
that leads to a greener pasture. Because most decisions don't feel like they're big decisions. Most decisions are like, am I going to cross at this crosswalk or am I going to keep going on this block and take the next one? Having no idea what that's going to lead to in the butterfly effect of the life that we're all living.
Yeah.
So, in retrospect, I'm really glad that I stuck to my guns with the things that at my core I felt most strongly about. I didn't have a
Yeah.
picture of where it would end me up, but every time that I think about what's my future going to be now, and I've just finished an 11-year run on satellite radio where every day talking to tens of thousands of people and really getting to live and breathe that ethos and
Yeah.
creativity all the time.
Can you
Uh,
share a little bit about
yeah,
that? How you got to that even into that position, or if it was just thrust upon you, or you
yeah.
sought it out, or I guess how does that
All right, here comes the
work?
lightning round because we
All right,
keep talking about like my backstory. I'm gonna blaze the trail here.
do
Let's
it.
get to the thing. Okay. In middle school, my friends and I discovered that we could start making movies for class credit. So we started making movies around the neighborhood, and I kept doing that through the end of high school. I was involved in music at the same time. I was in a choral group, so I already had like storytelling, audiovisual work, and music all at the forefront. So
Okay.
when I entered college, the only thing that I'm doing now that wasn't part of it yet was kids, but I happened to be involved in a Jewish student group freshman year of college. And one of the people there encouraged me to apply to teach at a summer or be a summer camp counselor in Malibu, California. And I'm Seattle. Like the idea of spending a summer in California is like the coolest idea ever, especially when the inception point of making that decision was like 40 degrees and raining in Seattle. So I'm like, dude, a summer in California, let's
Yeah,
do
fresh
this.
sold. Done.
Um, and within 3 weeks of being there, once the kids got there, I had no experience working with kids. I'm an only child. I, like, had some younger cousins, but I observed childhood and remembered being one, but I didn't have any experience. But within 3 weeks of having a cabin of kids and just learning as I went, I realized, like, this is the absolute utopian environment for me. So for the next 4 summers of college, I went back every summer and took on more responsibilities and realized, man, this is a place where all of those things come to play. I was video specialist for a summer,
Okay.
spent tons of time doing fun, creative things with kids. So when I graduated college, I realized I need to figure out a way to keep kids just part of my windshield all the time. And luckily, a school where I was working after school during college was hiring for after school programs. Got that job, eventually got a classroom, and that's where I met the members of my band Recess Monkey, which is now 20 years old that we've been
Oh my
making
goodness.
music for kids and families. And then that led to me meeting all the team at SiriusXM, which was then just XM. We started guest hosting as a band, and once there was an opening for that position, my then stay-at-home dad duties were dwindling because my son was getting old. So I had all this time in the afternoon. I had this room, and I realized I could actually start hosting a show from home, doing the stuff that I love doing as a teacher, just little 5-minute breaks where there's nothing going on and you just get to laugh and have fun playfully with kids. Then I could
Yeah.
turn that into a job. So that became my career for the next 11
Oh
years.
my God. So you were doing it out of the home studio. You didn't go into some big studio somewhere
Yeah,
to do that,
this
to
this is the
record this?
Monkey House where I have been
Oh
doing
my
my show
gosh.
for all those years.
So
And
cool.
this I started doing it in 2013, and
Okay.
internet was fast enough then, and the technology was just to
Yeah.
the point with satellite radio that I could basically just tie my home studio here into a single ISD, or not even ISDN, like cable internet modem that
Yeah.
beamed all the way to DC and was sent up by satellites and landing in cars all across
That's
North
so
America.
cool. And that
And
was
I could do
before
laundry at the same time too, by the way. I could,
that's awesome.
yeah.
And that was before remote working became vogue.
When COVID shut everything down, for a while I was off because I still needed a producer in DC to be able to turn knobs and take calls. But they figured out that technology, how to make that a stay-at-home process too. But
Mm,
when everyone else was trying to learn how to use Zoom, I'd been using it for 5 years because I'd been working remotely this whole time,
right.
broadcasting remotely. Yeah, I was ahead of the curve that way.
It's very cool. That is so neat. That is really, and just the creativity and the imagination that that channel and you brought to the environment. Cause obviously, like I said, I had my kids, my boys listen to you for many years. And that's just immense. I still think there's just you have just an inherent talent for it. Maybe it's just you showing up all the time and there's a discipline built to it and that creative imaginary that just flows through you. But you really do have a talent for it.
I think I'm an extrovert, which helps. Actually, if you take the Myers-Briggs test,
Sure.
have you taken the Myers-Briggs
I
recently?
have. I don't remember what I am though. I don't remember what the breakdown is.
I'm an ENTJ, which is known
Okay.
as the executive.
Okay.
But my extrovert versus introvert, is actually like almost right on the line. It's like on a 20-point scale, I'm like 11 points extrovert, 9 points introvert.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
it's actually a really good working balance because before you and I started talking, I've been here in my studio just working happy as a clam, crossfading and ducking audio bits in my next podcast episode and getting through a mountain of email. Like, I love alone time and I recharge that way. But
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something about being with people that for me just opens me and my mind starts working more quickly. I
Yeah.
feed off the energy that kids bring to the table, not just like in a radio setting. When my band
Yeah.
Recess Monkey play shows, we're like this. It's like when you take two mirrors and face them toward each other in the bathroom, that infinite feedback
Sure.
loop that you get.
Yeah.
That's the way the energy goes when you're surrounded by kids, for me anyway. So
Absolutely.
it was a really good fit.
And I do have a couple because you had brought up some really good points, but I do just staying in your background a little bit. Tell me the entry into the band. Like, how did that kind of start? You just met them
Yeah.
and you were like, let's just start playing. And you got your bass and you guys just history from there. Cause there's a Grammy nomination in there too, right?
Oh, there
That's
is. Yeah.
yeah. And it's
Um,
16 albums I saw online. Is that right? Or is that
I think 14 Recess Monkey albums, but
okay?
4 solo albums and a bunch of EPs. So
Okay.
I've made about a 400 songs, give or take, maybe a little
Oh my
more.
gosh.
It's a
That's
lot.
crazy. So
Yeah.
after you tell me a little bit about the story, I do have one question about songwriting in general, but just go back in time a little bit about the band and you had your bass, you're a man with a bass and you're ready to party and
Yeah,
you found the right people.
I should grab my McCartney bass off the wall and play the Seinfeld theme song while we're
Oh
going
my
like
gosh, that's beautiful.
actually I was in okay, so I omitted a little bit of my story when I was doing lightning round backstory.
Uh-oh.
Um, when I skipped out on pre-med, I also skipped out on college for a little bit. I dropped all my classes and just had a
Sure.
real, what am I doing? I think everyone should do it. I luckily
Yeah.
went to a state school, so the tuition impact of me doing that was not as great had I squandered a year's tuition at Wesleyan where I had intended to go. Which it would have been. I would have met the guys from MGMT, but it probably would have been a big waste of money for my first 2 years. So I'm glad it worked out this way.
All right.
But when I came to and realized, like, all right, it's time to grab the bull by the horns and just make this something that's going to make me into a happier person. I started chasing visual art first. So I took a lot of painting and drawing classes and then took a lot of creative writing classes. And in the end, creative writing won. And I wrote a novel over the course of my time. And it was an exhaustive process. It was like a
Okay.
150,000 word book,
Oh my God, that
400
is
pages. It was long
oh my
and
God.
it
Yeah,
was
150,000 because you like a novel is usually what 90,000 plus words, I think.
yeah, it was
So
collage fiction, which is dangerous because with collage fiction, there's no end to how many layers you can superimpose on top of it. So
yeah,
I just kept going until it felt done. It wasn't a thesis requirement. I was just very much in the, like you said, the state of flow, that
yeah.
Csikszentmihalyi thing. So I got through 2 rounds of editing, and by the end of it, I was done. Like I had
Sure.
put 2 solid years of my bachelor's degree life, 3 years of it into this project. And when I finished it, it was like, okay, stuck it in the drawer, closed the drawer, and immediately drove to Guitar Center in Seattle and bought my first bass.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. Wait,
just
so you didn't publish that book?
nope,
Oh my
no.
gosh.
I Kinko's. I made
Nice.
about 20 copies of
Okay.
it. Honestly, it was an amazingly creative process. I learned a ton about myself in the process, but it was
Sure.
also way more about how do you steer a ship, all like we were talking earlier, how do you steer a ship from beginning to end, encounter
Mhm.
those surprises along the way. Uh,
Yeah.
and what version of your initial thinking makes it to the end. It was
Oh, that's
a
fascinating.
hugely invaluable process for me, and
Yeah,
I figured they always say, right? What I was
yeah,
23, so frankly, I didn't know a lot, and
yeah.
I don't know if the book was really that ready for
Yeah, I'm so
anyone.
although I've seen some 23-year-olds that think they know everything.
Yeah, sure, yeah, definitely, yeah.
But
Some of my
if
favorite
I may
authors.
jump on that writing really quick too,
Yeah.
and 'cause you said a couple of really cool things. Was one of those is I enjoy writing as well too. I did not write a 150,000 word book. That's very impressive. I don't know if I have my could last hold on that long, but I think some of it is like you set out, and I envision it this waypoint, like maybe a lighthouse across a small sea, and you navigate in the wind and the tides and the currents, and it's you don't, even if you're not going to quite end up there, it's you're just flowing with these imaginary points and seeing where the story takes you. And you said something about what's the original thoughts. I'm paraphrasing, but what is that, what original thoughts make it to that
Yeah,
end,
yeah,
which is a
yeah.
really interesting thing, because in some ways, and you talked about a 2 3 year time window, but sometimes these go longer, and when the seeding of them until that we actually start putting action to them. But what I was going to say was, is we're not the same person we started in the journey.
So true. Yeah.
So those original thoughts, or the core thought, I I think the evolution of that. So I think you said there was something really genius about what you said there, is that what what makes it to that end. And I would imagine, and I guess my question would lead into some of those things about writing music, because I was going to ask you about original music versus doing like parody type music,
Oh,
or
yeah.
and some of those creative processes as well too. Or if you, or in that same light, I was going to put these in three buckets. Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of questions at you because I'm
No, this is
excited
good.
about what
Hang
you
on, let
said.
me this is like a
Yeah, you started getting
presidential debate.
bad paper. I can come back to them, but I was going to say was, even too with music writing, original writing, I was going to ask, does some of that evolve? Like you're like, yeah, this is going to sound great, and you actually start getting on it, riffing it, and you're like, this isn't, doesn't sound right, doesn't feel right, and
Well, that's interesting. I wish that we had this conversation about 6 years ago. I'm having a great time right now, but only because 6 years ago, my room looked almost identical to yours. I had the same color red walls
oh no
everywhere.
way, yeah,
And this whole wall here, before I hung up all my guitars, was full of framed album covers, all the albums that I
oh that's
made, all
cool,
in serial
yeah,
succession.
yeah, you had the
Um,
gallery wall, yeah.
yeah, so it would look exactly like where you are. This little wall would have just segued perfectly right into where you
Oh,
are.
that'd be fun. It would look
Um,
like you're in the same studio.
it really would have, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I could have just stuck my hand over here and just poked you right in the head. But the I just mentioned that because my philosophy, let me take a step back. The thing ultimately that burned me out on writing the novel that I wrote, it was called Departure. It was basically a coming of age novel. It really just mirrored kind of me just starting to live my own life, frankly. First person collage fiction and kind of surrealist. It felt the weirdest parts of the Big Lebowski for 150,000 words. But the the thing that ultimately burned me out on it was what you were talking about, the iterations and the fact that I was nowhere near the same person that I was at the end of it as I was at the beginning. And
Mhm.
even when going through and re-editing things in the new tone of voice that I developed over that time, I almost
Oh.
felt like I was terraforming over myself. Like I was
Oh,
it
yeah,
was
I
almost
bet.
like it was truly revising, but it was almost like revisionist history because it was such a personal project. I felt like it was actually undoing some of the historical accuracy of this piece. And contrast that with my wall of albums, which used to be over here, what, 18 records and EPs. My philosophy about, oh, and other ones too. Actually, if you take the indie stuff that I had made before we ever started making music for kids, it's probably 23 or 24 albums that I've made.
Wow.
Um, my philosophy on each one of those is that each one is a snapshot in time. It needs to be an authentic picture of where you are creatively,
Mhm.
thematically, in terms of your skills, your acumen, your ambition, all that. And you got to do it as well as you can. You got to put everything into it. And then when it's finished, don't look back. It's there.
Okay.
It'll be
Yep.
there. And from a fan's perspective, our Recess Monkey was lucky enough to have a lot of fans through the years that followed us through the ages and caught us in various iterations of our band. So they knew a different band depending on when they joined in with us.
Yeah.
The beauty of that is that we could always look ahead to the next thing. And my philosophy was always, we'll know that we're doing good work and we'll know that we deserve to continue being a band as long as we're never trying to recreate something that we've already done.
Okay.
As
Yep.
long as we've already
Yeah.
got something that, or as long as we've got something in our windshield that is fully new and realized and inspired, and it's not,
Mhm.
"Hey, let's make one like we used to back in the day."
It's
And
probably gonna
frankly,
come out a little manufactured maybe or
yeah, or just maybe not as vibrant as it could be.
sure.
I might hack off a lot of Beatles fans about this, but Let It Be is my least favorite Beatles album. I don't like that record because I
Yeah,
feel like the band was trying to rediscover itself in by jumping into its earlier stages and trying to remember what it was like when they were young and full
right.
of vigor and all that. And it's guys, I mean, I know this
Yeah.
order doesn't quite work, but it's you should have stopped at Abbey Road. Like it
Yeah,
was great.
absolutely. No,
Great
I'm
place to
I'm
stop.
I'm with you because there is even a sense too of art being selfish, but in that authenticity, in that give it like being I'm making it for me and because I love it, I think it's beautiful, it's inspired.
Yeah.
And but that's when you find those fans that truly love it too, because they see the authenticity instead of and maybe manufactured isn't the right word, but contrived or I'm at a little bit of loss for the right word of that, but
Contrived
you're
is that's a loaded word, but I think that kinda gets to it, yeah.
yeah, because you're trying if you try to produce something where you think, "Oh, I know Jack's gonna like this, so I'm gonna twist and turn my art into something that I think Jack's gonna." I didn't do it for me, but when I do it for me, there's a sense of me actually giving a bit of that to the greater universe. So I see a little bit of that too, that exchange, and it's selfish, and I'd say it in a good way. There's I really want to give that piece of my interpretive creativity out,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's something there in that.
Yeah, so, for me yeah, definitely. You gotta have some if you're gonna say something, you better have something to say, and hopefully it's not something you've already said before. Hopefully it's something new. I have in my mind had this question mark 'cause I almost I apologized about the Let It Be thing because there's a chance that some members of a Beatles group that I'm in,
Oh
we call
boy.
ourselves the Beat Geeks, it's like a
Okay.
book club for music. There's a chance that some of them are gonna watch this,
Yeah.
and at least 2 of them, their favorite album is Let It Be. So
I got it. Got it.
yeah, to
All
Ron
right.
and
So
Chris, I'm just
so if
apologizing
I get a
now.
DM from you saying redact it,
No, no, it's okay. I'm apologizing to them, but I've spoken in that group this theory, and this cuts close to the core because I'm in violation of this theory that no band should be around longer than 10 years. Like
oh,
even
interesting.
looking at bands that have stretched their careers into 30 or
Yeah.
40-year sagas, it's did you are you really still vibrant? Are you really still doing it? There should be a congressional or like an amendment to the Constitution that
Yeah.
any band that hits its 10-year mark just must immediately be disbanded
Oh
and
my God,
start
that's
over, do
crazy.
something
Or
else.
maybe they start a different in a different genre or something. They have to completely reinvent themselves. I don't know.
Just 'cause it's hard to stay salient and it's hard to stay fresh and to not become a parody of yourself.
Oh, that's a
But
good point.
of
You
course,
can be.
I'm saying that because in light of the fact that I've been in a band for 20 years now and we're still together. So I get the
Yeah.
irony of me saying this, but
Yeah.
that is a question that comes to mind. Like, for how long can you be truly innovative and creative in this space? Youth plays into it. I'm getting older. There's that question too. Are you really, where are you in the zeitgeist? I don't know. There's just lots to
Yeah.
think about. Sustaining a career creatively is a challenge, I think.
Yeah. But you really you have all that talent stacking even in the younger age. We're talking about the video, the writing, the vision as far as even like being able to do graphic design or whatever. You really continue to talent stack yourself. So I think that you've beautifully interwoven all those different talents into not becoming stagnant.
Oh, thank
You're
you.
in the music.
So the backstory of why I referred to my time hosting Live for the Monkey House on Kids Plays Live on Sirius XM for 11 years, the reason I'm on the other end of that is as we're talking right now, about a month ago, several of us in the kids facing portions of Sirius XM and Pandora were laid off without any warning, just very abruptly. Our shows left the air, leaving our audiences without content in those times and really no explanation of why it happened. I immediately was empathetically was turning to those listeners, thinking about kids. I had an experience when I was a kid. There was a particular movie called The Cat from Outer Space that
Okay.
used
I
to
don't know
like
it.
a Disney movie.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm guessing it's not a great movie, but my little 5-year-old brain was in love with this movie. There was no way to see it beyond what I'd seen, like, on HBO at home. This is before you could even rent movies.
Sure.
So, the only thing I could do was write a letter to HBO and just beg them to play it again, and it didn't work. But I remember having a real trauma that this thing that I had connected with wasn't there.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I really identified with kids were used to hearing my voice and show and games in afternoons and evenings in their world.
Absolutely. Because there's a familiarity, there's a dependability. That's
Yeah,
that safety and the consistency for especially for kids. It's that continuity. There's a
yeah.
real there's a real anchor point there. That's a real there's a weight
Absolutely,
to it.
and for some kids, it's not just a comfort. For some kids, depending on where they are on the developmental spectrum, it's like a full-blown necessity, like
Yeah.
having truly consistency from day to day. So my empathetic heart went to them directly, and I realized I gotta get myself as present as I can and accessible as possible to
Hmm.
those kind of families and kid listeners. Just it wasn't my choice to leave abruptly, but I at least can try to feather the edge, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And maybe create something new that has some power and sustainability to it.
Yeah.
As we're talking right now, I just released the 11th episode of my new podcast today, which is on
Absolutely.
the
I
air.
was going to mention that too, so I'm glad you brought that in there. That's very cool. So
Always,
that's the
always be
11th.
plugging. That's my new rule. Always be plugging.
Always be plugging. I love it. So is that you said the 11th episode?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I apologize. I just talked to, I was going to say, are you doing interview style? Are you doing solo? Are you doing a mix or how's your kind of premise? Or are you still figuring out where some of that
No, it feels
nebulous?
like a real continuation from where my show left off.
Sure.
The great thing about a podcast is that it's on demand. People can figure out a way to fit this into their worlds. Episodes are between 25 and 35 minutes long each. There's a format, but it's basically all built around kid callers and things that they're excited about. So
Yes.
every episode starts with someone calling in to ask what's something that you're excited about, what's something that is you're looking forward to or that's making you really pumped right now. And then I call them back and we just have a really fun and unexpected conversation about that topic for several
Yeah.
minutes. And that kind of fuels the rest of the episode. It's very much what I did on the air. My favorite live shows were ones where kids were in the driver's seat and just pushing us,
Yeah.
um, driving us into new territory. So I
And
get
I
to
do
do
have to
that.
say, you do, like I said, because my family has listened to you, and you do really do a beautiful job at keeping the conversation going. Because sometimes kids can get a little stuck on something, or they'll be at loss for words. It'll just give you the one word answer, and you'll be like, you'll go into tell me something that's great, that's amazing in your life. And they'll be like, yes.
Yeah, yeah, or nod at the phone because some
Not at the phone, right?
kids
You're like, oh,
figure
yeah,
it
I
out.
can't hear that nod, but and you do a great job at keeping them going and keeping them that moving and the excitement built into there. And it's funny too because it translates even to the parents as well. I believe.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
like
my
the great Warner Brothers cartoons. That's something that Kids Place Live, I think, really did exceedingly well, and what I tried to do both as a member of Recess Monkey on my show,
yeah.
in my solo music. That Warner Brothers multi generational
Mhm.
programming where there's something for everyone. Maybe some jokes will be just for the grown-ups who are listening, some will be
Sure.
just for the kids, but people are going to want to listen to this together, and it's a truly
Yeah.
shared experience. So I've been hearing from people who are listening, like at the breakfast table on the way to before leaving the house, or like that my show has become part of their dinner routine.
Yeah.
It was on the air and now it is again.
Yeah. My
In,
boys will get excited when there's a new episode. To just let you know too. So I
oh,
mean,
that's
yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're definitely a huge fan. So clearly, this is an exciting one. And before we started recording, you got to meet them quick, so that was a real honor too for
Yeah,
them. So,
totally. And they're doing piano lessons right now too.
yep,
So
they
they'll,
are. They
they'll
are.
be in the
So
next wave. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They're following in the footsteps of you and the music and at an early age and stuff. I definitely did not have that. I did not have that talent with the music as a ever in my life.
Yeah, it's I really think kids come out more or less fully formed, and
Yeah,
it's just peeling back the layers of the onion, and you discover, wait a minute, this is who you are. Like, how did? And they were
yeah,
like that the whole time. There's
yeah.
just no telling. So yeah, my philosophy on this show, and also really, I was a teacher for 13 years, so I've handled all of the core curricula. I've focused on the big meaty conversations, and I really respect what teachers do and what parents and
Absolutely.
guardians do. I think it's all really super important. I think the thing that I can bring to the table and what gets me most excited, and I think that reciprocal feedback loop of excitement with
Yeah,
families is just celebrating these things that we all have in common. Celebrating joy, celebrating happiness. We're certainly finding lots of ways to make ourselves bummed out, both as adults and just generally. There are a lot of things that there's a lot of noise out there, and
absolutely.
I'm hoping that one of those some of that white noise is replaced with laughter. So that's something that I'm really excited to get to keep doing, and it's mine.
Now,
I
is there a
can
growing? Is there like? Do you have a app as far as like a crescendo to the podcast? Obviously, keep it going. Are you building some media, like a media firm around it? I don't know. Maybe it's a loaded question. Is there? Is it
Yeah,
just you're
sky's the
just
limit right now. I this is new territory, and when we
yeah,
were talking earlier about that sort of the terror of not knowing what the path is gonna look like or where things are gonna go, I vacillate minute by minute between exhilaration of this could be anything and the terror of this could be nothing.
yeah, yeah.
Which
No,
one is that?
I can see it. I definitely I feel that pain as well too. That's I'm like, I know if I keep having great conversations and inspired conversations, something great's gonna happen. And I don't know what that great thing is, but something
Yeah,
great's gonna happen. And then I wake up at 2 in the morning and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Should I but I was gonna say another thing as you were talking, what I was thinking about was creativity. I don't believe it can live in a vacuum. So like for
right,
you, and it was actually one conversation I had too, which I also liked with this one woman on the show here was it's a messenger. She described as creativity as a messenger. So it's given or it's traveled through, and maybe messenger isn't the right word, but there's something to it. Is your music? It's the children listen to it, the parents listen to it. You have a following, and then it's received by them, filtered by them. It's probably even interpreted to them different than when you gave it, and it's passed on through us as human beings, and how we receive it is different and beautiful in its own way. But creativity in itself carries on and stretches on, and there is no beginning, there is no end, and it's that timeless exchange of how it goes around and how we're inspired by stuff and we give it to people. And I feel like it's just it can't be in a vacuum. So I think even too you doing this your show, your podcast, and I believe it's gonna go somewhere amazing. I
yeah, yeah, yeah. The school where I used to teach, and I didn't quite fill in the gaps there, but bought my bass after finishing my novel. And within 6 months, I had joined an indie band in Seattle, which was a very on point thing to be doing in Seattle in the year 2000.
I was gonna
Um,
say, wasn't that like everybody had an indie band
Yeah,
in
pretty
Seattle?
much. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, all right,
totally.
all
Yeah,
right.
so the bands would literally play on top of each other. But my 2 worlds were colliding because I would be loading into a club at, like, 7 or 8 PM, loading out at 3 in the morning, and then, kindergarten the next morning. Like, 5 hours later,
Yeah,
something had to give, and frankly, that indie scene was not a very joyful place. Like, we would
sure.
walk into a gig, and the engineer would remember us and be like, "Oh, yeah, you're that band that's always smiling." Like, we were the one. That's the vibe that
You
we
still
were
had
getting.
life.
It was
You weren't dead behind your eyes. It was like you guys still had life in you.
yeah, 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 wow, you guys aren't brooding at all. So, it became pretty clear that the place I was deriving joy from, even though I loved music, the place I was deriving joy from was my profession. I love teaching, and, all of those triggers and levers that kids present every day just by being themselves, those were all happening, and it was like, I don't need to be trying to chip away at something at nighttime and be at the
Right.
right club at the right time. So we experimented, 2 fellow teachers and I experimented with what would happen if we took, like, our indie rock sensibilities and just lyrically tried to create something that lyrically spoke to kids in the childhood experience.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
initially, it was really just for kids, and then we started opening it up to being really a shared experience between kids and families. And within it took a little while. It was not hugely aspirational because we already had gigs as teachers. So this was like follow your heart and your nose into what are some things we could try. But within a few years, we were filling rooms all around Seattle, playing 80 or 100 shows a year.
It's a
Yeah,
lot.
eventually when my son was born, I left teaching and stayed at home with him and just became our full-time band manager because
Okay.
we needed one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how once again, like, if you stick to your passion, not necessarily
Mhm.
what you think it's gonna look like at the end, but more how do you use your passion and discover little nooks and crannies that it can fit into. Sometimes those nooks and crannies get a lot bigger the more energy that you put into them. You don't
That's
realize how
true.
much opportunity was
Yeah.
there.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love it. Jack, I know that we've been on for a bit and I have absolutely enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's
For
an honor to be here.
absolutely. Perfect. Thanks again. And I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, totally.